Just a bit about me. Already you know that I'm a father of a 13-year-old. And then there's another one who is 11, following very closely, 1.5 years apart. And then there's our last born who is 6 years old. So together with my wife, we actually home educate them. We made that choice as a step-by-step. It's a long story, but we do what generally people call home education. I prefer calling it organic learning because our parents, our great-grandparents used to home educate, right? Before education came, the last 100, 150 years, whatever, people were just apprenticing and learning at home. And so we do that with my wife. That's important to mention. And she's the co-founder of Badili Experience because we met doing youth work, and she was in the outdoors in another organization. I was in the outdoor space, experiential learning. We met, and that's how God brought us together and our family formed. And it's been 15 years of adventuring together and the blessing of the 3 children who we are very grateful to God for. Part of the work that got me, I'll just mention just in the next few minutes, just so that you sort of understand the context which I am coming from. So working at Tanari, rites of passage experiences and all this youth work got me in a space where I was asked to be the youth voice to shape their national family policy. So there are many stakeholders there, lawyers, all kinds of people, as you can imagine, soup game, Hindu council, whatever. But there's a way God also worked it out in such a way that at the end, we were just 4 of us, were all Christians. And God enabled us to engage in policy work for the country and really put in what we believe in. So what Dr. Murithi was talking of here, are there lawyers who can do this? Is there space for advocacy? Is there space for tinkering with our laws in the country? That has actually been happening. And part of what I will just go straight up to invite you to is part of the organization that got us in is an organization called Kenya Christian Professionals Forum. They started advising the bishops and the pastors in 2010 to have the position for what the Christian position would be for the Constitution. Of course, it went no, yes, no, yes. Eventually, we know the result. But at that time, they were engaging as Kenya Christian Lawyers Fellowship. Then they said, why don't we open the space up to include other professionals so that we can continue being the professional voice that advises the church to have the right kind of voice in the public space. And so that has been happening for the last 10 years. And recently, about maybe around about the time I was getting the call to come and talk to NAYNET, I also got a call from KCPF. They asked me, would you be the convener of the family thematic area? So there are 5 other areas: governance, religion, education, and life, yes. So the 5th one is family, and then there's media. DJ Soxy runs that. But media cuts across all because all of us need media. And so that's how I found myself. And I didn't know that in May 12th, we will be having a family symposium where we're bringing all stakeholders of young people, youth workers, children workers, guys who are in marriage ministry, anyone who touches the family on a one round table to discuss everything that Dr. Murithi is talking about here. How do we address? And of course, we've now been really, really charged up because of the issue of the ruling of the LGBTQ. And part of it is, were Christians there? Yes. They had been there all the way from 2010, 2012. These guys sneaked in. One of the guys who really pushed for it, I think he's called Gitari, Harvard-trained, I believe very well funded, to come and actually try and twist the laws. And the big issue was just what you guys are talking about. It is where sex, whereas it's understood as male and female, for now words have meaning. Somebody talked of philosophy. I also did philosophy for 2 years. And we were taught words have meaning. And so when you say sex and you know it's male and female, somebody else says, no, sex means sexual orientation. So when you go that way and you have a five judge bench and 3 of them are agreeing with this other second definition, then you can see how it went. Or you say gender, you say, gender is male and female. We know that from Genesis. But then the definition is, no. There's so many genders. In fact, I think there was a BBC documentary that is saying there are 100 genders. Now you can go LGBTQ, finish all the letters, and then you start over again, 100. And I also like somebody else called it the right word. It's an ideology. And it is very connected to just the devil's agenda and his agents. But some of the very weak points that we are seeing is your government can be a weak point, and we'll get to talk about that. And so how do you respond? So I just want to mention that to invite you. You can get my number from NAYNET, or if you want to get it right now, 0721 21 again, 7777. I'm not sure whether I've done the right thing, but nishasema 0721 21 again, 7777. If you want to be part of that roundtable. I found myself on 2 fronts. Say DD, let me use language that is understandable here. In other places, I'll use something else. So there's discipleship as central, and there's a gentleman who was seated right here said, yeah, we should do discipleship. I'm very passionate about that, discipleship. And then there's defending the space where discipleship happens. Because if the legal part breaks up, and we have a crack that allows for interpretation differently, the next thing they go for is education, and they've been trying that through, CSE, Comprehensive Sexuality Education, and I've been there. I was privileged to be at. Education is a highly contested place for anyone who wants to put any kind of, let me call it the mind share. Whether it's marketers, they want a mind share. The climate change guys, they want a mind share. The drugs guys, they want a mind share. Everybody wants a mind share. And then, and there's a lot to talk about that. How is it that we're not able to finance our own curriculum, that we have to receive money from somewhere, and then we are twisted to go another direction. But thankfully, Christians have been awake. And so that space, to defend that space, is almost like that fence, so that things are not changed, so that tomorrow you're told you can't do, what do you call them, PPE? Pastoral PPI. What if tomorrow you're told you can't do PPI? Because you are asleep, somebody made different laws. What if you're told you can't go in and say anything that is, we are a secular state, you can't bring in your religion here? What if that happened? So that space needs to be defended. And the people who need to defend it is Christians, so that you can continue doing your discipleship. We pray for the leaders so that there is peace and so that the gospel can advance. And so we have tools in a democratic space, and I really learned this. I didn't know much. I think I sort of used to hear it, but I really got to understand it when I began doing that policy work with Serikali, the Ministry of Social Protection, that, it went up to the cabinet. We were told, no, you need to take it back for more public participation. So it's almost like government is saying, you guys, 2010 Constitution requires you to participate so that you tell us how you want to be governed. That's democracy. But we are still, some of us in Moi era, where, hey, Serikali is this power distance. They tell us, they know what to do. But then we are just empowering. So that's the space, defending the space for discipleship to continue. And so that's on the aside. And let's meet on the 12th of May and 13th of May. Now, back to the topic of why I was even asked to come and talk about the family-based ministry, youth-based family ministry. So, for the sake of just demonstrating, this is our young person, because all of us come and we are talking about young people over here. Oh man, this thing is not working. They're not working. So if you can find me another, I'll appreciate. But hopefully you're still able to see my dot over here. All right. Yeah. So this is the young person. And then we have you, who is engaging the young person in those 2 hours, or when you go for camp, like Naya over here, she organized the camp recently, and all the camps that we organize, or maybe you went for a mission, and maybe you have more contact time at different times, but generally on a Sunday, and maybe if they sing, there's some hours that you spend time, assuming, with this young person. So that's you. So you are here. So I want you to discuss in your group, if you are one of the influencers of this young person, I want to use the word, you're a stakeholder in this young person's life. Who are the other stakeholders that actually, influence them? So can we see how many other stakeholders, who are they, what kind of influence do they bring in? So in your group, just come closer and just discuss who are the other stakeholders and what is the influence that they actually have on this young person or young people, in a collective. So I'll give us 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll get to hear just a bit about what you're discovering. All right. I think we can pause there. I'll pick one from each group. Just mention one that you think was a big one. And if once it's mentioned, you can't mention it. You pick another one that was in your list. All right. So here I got, should I just call it media? All right. Parents. Behind there? They are friends. Friends. I also was overhearing another conversation over here. Peers. Friends, eh? Okay. Church, yes. The school and the curriculum. All right. Behind, and then I'll come Bele. Oh, nannies. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. You're right. Okay. Nannies. Yo mkomesahau. Yes. Yeah. Celebrities. Wow. Okay. Are they connected to media? Not necessarily. They stand on their own. Okay. Or they use media. Okay, sawa. So celebrities, celebs. Yeah, influencers, all of them are here. Yes. Okay, so there's also siblings, older ones. You're very right. On matters, by the way, even sexuality, that tends to be the case a lot. Siblings. Yeah. Employees and colleagues influence youth. Oh, your youth is up to 35. Okay. The Kenyan. Okay. Fine. Employees. Oh, workplace. Okay. Yeah, I had a sort of, yes. Community or society. Oh, neighbors. Okay, neighbors is a bit more tangible than society, because all these people form society. All right, let's say neighbors. All right, so parents, relatives. Yeah, by the way, I mean, this, yes. Models, celebs? No? Models and celebs are different. Can I then do celebs and models? Okay. All right. Yeah, culture, I like the word culture, but how do you hold culture? My thinking is all these people contribute to the composite of what becomes culture. In fact, maybe I can go ahead and say the way, because we engage a lot, at least we think we do, we engage a lot with culture. Think of it as that which you believe in, that therefore you become. Whatever you believe is what you become. So what influences what you believe in, and therefore what you become, that contextual environment is what produces now what you can call culture. And it is a contribution of all these guys, including, friends. Our 6-year-old came one day, she had gone to a camp, and she came and said, "Mom, what is sex?" And I don't know, said, no. She said, "Is it true that if you have sex, you will be taken to juvenile?" Well, we've not taught these two words. I told you we are home educators. We've never taught juvenile, we've never taught sex. So one week, 1 month down the line, Suti, did you talk to her, eh? So I'm assuming, you have that conversation, that sex, juvenile conversation. 3 months. Then I said, no. Something has to change. Let me sit my girls down. And so you pray. Then God really helps you. It didn't help that I had been teaching sexuality, or at least been in a part of an organization that had been teaching sexuality, creating positive relationships of CPR. And I had the knowledge. I was like, okay. So, you sweat a bit and then you say, okay, fine. Then God gave me a very nice way of doing it. I happened to have read ahead of what we were going to read in the evening during our family, just talking together and all. And it was a story of the virgin daughters of Jerusalem. Fantastic. So we read, and we had taught them, but if you find a new word, you ask, what is that? So the virgin daughters of Jerusalem. The virgin daughters of Jerusalem. Dad, what is a virgin? Now, a virgin is a girl who has never had sex. Pause for effect. My 6-year-old is like, oh, Dad, what is that? So, like, the 4.5-year-old is giggling. She's like, oh, yeah. So I'm like, where did a 6-year-old get the idea of having shame around? Like, she's like, hey, Dad, this is not something we talk about. Okay, generally, she's a very logical, she's very gifted with her mind. And so she understands things in the abstract. At 4, we had a conversation about salvation, and she said, yeah, I understand. I want Jesus to be in my heart. Unlike the others. So I know cognitively there's a way she catches things very quickly. Then I went, she's like, 4.5-year-old, wait, Dad, let me tell you what sex is. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, tell me what sex is. She said, sex is when you love, how did she say? Is it a boyfriend and girlfriend? You love each other forever. Then you sit on the bed, then you kiss. Then you sit again, and then you kiss again. It's like, yeah, that is sex. So I was doing a couple of things. I'm listening. How much do you know? Thankfully, I have a bit of training to just hold myself up like, you know. I'm just like, and inside I'm feeling like, how can you know about this stuff? And my 6-year-old now is beginning to relax. He's like, oh, it looks like Dad is easy about this stuff, okay? Then she gave me her version. And then we began building up the conversation. The story is there there's a page we opened called Kizazi Kipya, Parenting Adventure, because of the parenting program we've run for 10 years. So I collect stories from parents of all kinds. So if you go on Facebook, we need to change it to the website. Facebook Kizazi Kipya Parenting, you'll find the story there, or how to talk to your children about sex. And so when you think about it, they are already being influenced. It was a church camp, remember? Church camp. That's why they came back with this juvenile sex story. Another time, I could tell you more stories. My 3-year-old told me, Dad, I found a boyfriend. 3-year-old. I'm like, boyfriend. I'm almost falling on my chair. I'll come here. Yeah, oh, boys. Again, my 4.5-year-old, she's like, you don't talk to dad about stuff. Because, the mom had traveled, so we just having fun, went to eat fries, all the bad things that the mom doesn't like. So they were telling me stories. We're just hanging out. So she said, yeah, what's it? So I was like, yeah, you need to test this. This is for real. So what's his name? Jacob. Yeah, it's actually a real guy. Jacob, where did you meet Jacob? Sunday school. And there are many more stories that, they said, yeah, it's good to have friends, boys, girls, just have many of them. And we just laughed it off. And so we've been sort of easy talking about this, having to overcome a lot of cultural inhibitions. We grew up with a lot of viruses around this subject of sexuality, a lot of viruses. By the time you're getting married, you have so many viruses, you have so many interesting expectations, you just have viruses and you need a software upgrade. Jesus Christ. Just read the Bible, it will clean up what Dr. Muredi is talking about here. You will change, So accept first that you have inhibitions as a parent and then continue. Anyway, that's the kind of talk I normally have with parents. I'm missing? Oh, leaders and teachers. Teachers. School. Okay, teachers. Tell me about leaders. So leaders of influence wherever. Okay? Great. Leaders. I want us to reflect a bit now. There is one that you have left out, a stakeholder here. Yes. Yeah. Okay, yourself, yes, as a parent, assuming. Youth worker is here? Yes. Oh, themselves, they're here. These ones, they're here. This is the child. And yes. But somebody talked of? God. We're coming to that. We're coming to that. And that's like the major stakeholder that we need to build everything. And we'll see who then is helping us in advancing God's agenda. Okay? But there's still one that you've left out. Very important. You even talked about that one. Oh yeah, by the way, it's true. That's a major one. Let me add. Devil is a stakeholder. It is true. And by the way, he uses all these guys as agents. Somebody mentioned it. The government. And I don't know how we've been discipled. We don't think the government is a stakeholder. Because, when the government tells you Michuki rules, everything changes. When the government wakes up and says all the buses need to be yellow, you enter into a yellow bus. When the government says, so even what the three arms of government, depending on how they're working, they determine our lives all the time. They can decide tax is this much. VAT, now we're pushing it. And then you begin saying inflation, unga now is this, that. Government is a big stakeholder. And it affects especially Ministry of Education, as far as now family conversations are concerned, Ministry of Health. I can tell you for a fact, because we used to do facilitation of sexuality some years back with Tanari, when the First Lady then, they launched a campaign called the All In campaign. It sounded very nice, all in. It's almost like everybody in campaign. The next thing after that, condoms are being distributed in high schools. And it was ushered in by the leaders who are supposed to be the custodians of our. When Obama came in town, it took lobbying of churches, some church leaders, to get the hearing of the president. Very, very close to by the time he was coming, because, they already read the game. These are Democrats. This is how they do their thing. They will come and push whatever they're still pushing here. And so then our president stood and said, those issues are a non-issue for us. It took the voice of the church in the background to get him to, oh, okay, yeah, but then it makes sense. And then he said it. And then Obama was sort of, it would have looked diplomatically really bad if he spoke. So government is a very, very important, and because it's a democratic government, I can't stress it enough, we are the people, government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's the definition of a democratic space. It's not like, even the time of Jesus. It was a very totalitarian, the Pharaoh, whatever, what are they called? The leaders of government then. Anyway, so I just need you to understand this. Now, I want you to go into a self-reflection. Maybe 3 minutes or less. Just 1 minute. Think about when, and by the way, I really felt part of it was a setup. When you look behind there, I don't know if you're able to see. What does this give you? This behind the cross. Yeah? So that is what? Yeah, it's like your uniqueness, your identity, who you have become now. Not the identity the way it's being defined, I identify as a cat or I identify as a whatever, but the real identity. So just reflect. We were talking about our children. Now I want you to reflect about yourself. Who influenced you the most in your journey of values, beliefs, who you have become? Whatever you believe collectively and who you have become in your younger years, let's say up to 18, that influence up to 18, who influenced you the most? Any of these stakeholders, you can categorize them the way you want, but who influenced you the most in who you have become because of the set of beliefs that you have embraced or embraced until around about 18. So this one, I'll just open it up. Once you've done that, I just want to hear a few of us, and then we'll move on. And if you can, list the top 3. Like this was number 1, then number 2, then number 3. Top 3. You can, of course, go all the way and see who influenced you in terms of who you became, as far as what you believe in, even, your work ethic now, just what you believe in, your values. Vile tu umetokelezea at 18, looking back. So let me hear a couple of us just to hear who influenced you the most and why. If you can also answer the why, just very quickly, we move the mic, we hear a lot more of us, then we proceed. And you can have the mic roaming once people have, yeah.
Hello, please allow me to add one more before I move to the next.
Okay.
I think sponsors or donors also are part of the influencers, especially in the current time.
Okay.
With what they are doing behind the scenes.
Some of you identify, yeah? Sponsors?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. To the next one is my parents.
Okay.
Teachers. And peers, in that order.
All right. So parents, teachers, and peers, eh?
Yes.
All right. You can be moving the mic around. I'll just be writing a few things here.
My circle was very small, so for me was my mom, my great-grandmother, and my dad, my stepdad.
In that order?
In that order.
Okay. So mom?
Great-grandmom.
Great-grandmom. And then stepdad. Okay, nice.
I think mine is simple parent, then teacher, then culture.
Culture. Just everything around now.
Okay, for me it's simple and then it gets complicated because it's parents, church, and the devil.
I'm sure everybody wants to hear, especially the third one. Eh? We'll come back to that. All right?
Media.
Okay.
Church. And then parents.
And by the way, if you can shout where you are, I think, if you have you can just...
Okay, for me, parents, especially my mom, because I've spent a lot of time with her. Then school, because I've spent a lot of time in boarding schools too. Then social medias.
All right. So again, media, social media. All right. And I like the fact that you've even gone ahead to describe why they're like that. Time, the factor of time.
I was influenced much by my grandmother because I lived with her most of my life. And then the church, at some point, I lived in church compound for a long time when I was young. And then now my academic life in school.
All right. Again, the factor of time, sounds like.
Okay, for me, it's my grandfather, my teacher, and fear.
Grandmother, and then? Oh, grandfather. Teacher, fear. This one we have to hear, and this one we have to unpack that a bit. Okay, last one. Last one, anyone?
Yeah, so mine is my parents, the church, then some 2 teachers.
Parents, church, teachers. All right, just for out of curiosity, because me, I love stories. Okay, fear, just unpack it a bit, and then we'll come to devil.
Okay, for me, my fear was being a girl. So I really wanted to be a boy, and I really behaved like a boy. I even used to go to the urinal and pretend to be a boy. So it was that serious. I went around the mugumo tree to be a boy. So I really operated in fear everywhere until I was 23 years.
Thank you again, for being vulnerable. And even in your story, it reveals a bit of what you had believed then, going around the mugumo tree, because people behave what they believe. If you really wanted to know, why are you behaving the way you are? You need to check what you believe, and then you will see, oh, this behavior, and that's part of what we need to be doing as youth workers. When you see this behavior hits you like, this is weird, before you judge, try and dig a bit and see where is this sort of, where it's sitting on some belief. I'll give you an illustration right now. Maybe let me just do it on the go. So this one, you got this one, right? That's the idea of a lot of stakeholders. All right? So what I want to do now is to build it up on, first, what is the factor that makes people rate things the way they are? In fact, let's hear the devil first. No, I mean, let's listen to this influence called the devil.
Okay, maybe just to be clear, I was never a devil worshipper. But I chose those 3 because 1, my parents, 2, the church. But they were saying almost the same thing. But there was something within me that was not agreeing with what they were saying. Like, for example, you should not have sex before marriage. But there was something inside of me that made me to taste the forbidden island. And now I've come to understand that that was the devil. A lot of things.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it's the devil.
Yeah. And what the devil, I feel, does, it amplifies. If you read James, it says the desires that you have, then you're tempted. Then I think now the devil helps you even further. So it does start with our desires, whichever direction, even in terms of rebellion. It's because something was done, then you rebel this way, then you begin trying to prove a point or whatever it is, then the devil really helps you along the way. So now we understand where the devil was coming in. Okay? So becoming or behavior. Sometimes I just call it behavior, but becoming, I find it is more, when you talk about transformation, you are becoming more like Christ, depending on what it is that, and I'll explore this a bit more. But let me come back here. Because we don't have time, and I've done this many times over with parents, when I ask what normally comes up as the number one answer is time. Just time. The person or the influence, let me use that word, or the stakeholder you spend more time with will influence what you believe in and therefore what you become. So here we're talking about family-based ministry, youth ministry. And there is a window of time that the children spend a lot of time, we are assuming, with their parents, or let me just put it generally, at home. And when they are at home, they are dealing with media, which most of the time the parent is the enabler. Like addicts, there's normally an enabler. So the enabler is normally the parent. You're talking of nannies, somebody mentioned here very aptly, who, of course, they're helping to run the home, brought in by the parents. You're talking of neighbors, the hood where this young person lives. You're talking of peers. They also spend time in school, depending on whether they're day school or boarding. Again, there's a lot of time that is spent there, so that your influence as a youth worker is only but one among all these others. But on a weighted index, and Dr. Murezi said it here, that's what I was saying, it was a setup, a research I think he's done, but I also know of many other, a lot of research that has happened. When young people are checked by many adults, you remember those arrows that I had drawn over here? Assuming all of them were in cahoots and agreed, we want our children to be honest. If all the adults or all the influences agreed, this is what we want, research shows that the child aligns. And what they're describing is that statement we've used a lot, it takes a village to raise a child. It's not in the Bible, but I will read you a verse that in many ways I think affirms that adage of it takes a village to raise a child. In Deuteronomy 6, we love it, right? All of us, we know it. Hear, O Israel. Even all the children of Israel don't have to go through this. The Shema is very important for them. Hear, O Israel, the Lord God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength. Before that, it actually says, these words are to be in your heart. Now, I also come from the camping world. So we know that Moses was running a camp of 2 million. It was a camp. And they kept moving. Then they set up another camp. Then they and then they keep moving. So we use that analogy a lot. And then he had camp counselors, sort of all these leaders of 50s, and they're all running, managing all the tribes. So you can imagine when he stands to say, hear, O Israel. I know we've used it a lot to talk about parents, but actually it doesn't say, hear, O parents. It says, hear all, O Israel. It's talking to anyone who is the age of responsibility that the Lord God is one. Put these words in your heart first, and then teach them in your children. And I like the fact that we said grandfather, grandmother, all these stakeholders, anyone who gives care to our young people, that is the message for them, including us as youth workers. Hear all, Christians. And then you go and say, and if you read it very carefully, because we work a lot, it starts from the inside out. It starts from here, and then it builds outward. So what are they being taught? They're being taught the truth. So when this session was happening here earlier, we talked about truth and grace. So if you combine truth and grace down here, which is what this root system is feeding on, but the devil is also there, he's the stakeholder. He also wants a mind share of our children. So you could be feeding on either the truth or a lie, by whatever means. You know, when the devil comes and says to that, no, I actually think she was a teenager then, Eve. What do you think? What age do you think she was? Well, yeah. But, you know, he says, did God really say? And so planting all this doubt and then eventually weaving it in. And the devil has a very nice way of weaving lies. If you go to the world of media, just the world of media alone, I wish you had a whole session on it to just see how lies are peddled, how we started with Mr. Bean, a very funny guy, and now you find the Mr. Bean animation is a whole completely different thing. But us as parents, we're still thinking, but it's Mr. Bean, I can't Mr. Bean. And then what is being peddled is the scenes that my 3-year-old is saying, I have a boyfriend. Because they've picked, there's something boyfriend, girlfriend, because there's a lot of nuanced conversation and what is called subliminal messaging that comes through media, enabled by the parent mostly, and then the peers kick in. By the time they're now teens, they're sharing phones and they're sharing videos and what have you. But you're either putting in truth or a lie, and then it feeds in. So by the time this word we love so much, so here you build some convictions. So if it's been wrapped up properly, your mind and emotions and something beyond that, where you say, I believe, I actually believe. You know, belief, you can't quite tear it apart with just reason alone. It is reason plus, plus, plus. Then this word we love so much, called values, comes in. Values don't sit in the air. They sit on a set of beliefs. Whether you've identified those beliefs or not, you actually believe something for you to behave in a certain way. Then you have certain values or vices along here, which helps you make some choices. Okay? So here it's values or vices, depending on where you're drinking truth or lie. Then it fits in, then now we can now go and begin harvesting some fruit. The consequence of what now you are becoming, increasingly becoming, then we can say, now we can talk about character. The character of this person is like this. This person, behaves in this manner. But it has gone through this process, at least just the anatomy of it, just tearing apart so that you understand where it's coming from. So that now when you're dealing with parents, which is what I want to do, what are the practical ways of working as one of the stakeholders, very important, as a youth worker, but then bringing this conversation to the family. I'll share a couple of stories, and then I'll ask you to list for me how many other experiences can you create. I'll give you my own experiences because I have sat as a youth worker and I'm now sitting as a parent, and I know how I have been helped by children workers and youth workers now in terms of continuing to build this. So at one time, one of the children workers in the church I go to really loves, sports and artists. So he comes with all kinds of stories. So when I'm debriefing my child, says, yeah, that Rouge team, was it Rouge team or Fiji? The Fiji Rouge team, written over here, Jesus. So he would tell his own stories of what is impressing him out there and says, yeah, this is how you carry out your faith. You talked about celebs and, people who the kids are looking up to. And so you begin telling them there is this one and this one. So that's one way of just telling them you can hold your faith and express it without any, holding back. Then at some point, they went ahead and, because he loved missions, he told you, when you go home, go and do a research on the unreached people groups. These are my personal stories. So I want you to think of how can you craft something in your end that comes and gets the parent engaged in what you are doing. So he said, go. There's a tribe called the Urdu. Anyone ever heard of the Urdu? The Urdu's one person. I'd never heard of it. But it's in which country? No. Yeah, Pakistani, they are Muslims. I said, I want you to go and research about the Urdu language and then see what they believe in And then after you've researched, you pray for them. So, we are 844 CBC parents. We understand homework. So, mtoto ameitishwa homework, and the child comes. This is serious because teacher said we do. Okay. But day 2, Dad, we've not done the research. When we go back, I will not have nothing to say. Yeah, okay. So we go in Urdu, and I'm interested. We go in the Urdu whole story, and we finish, and they're so jazzed. This is what they eat. This what, but then religion. This is the percentage. Then we end up praying for the Urdu people, that God would reach them. Then they go back. That teacher did that many times over. Go and research about this. And so our children want to go back and report what they found out, and you have to do it with your parent. So I want you to think, how many things can you create that will go back to get the parent on board with what you are doing? Because a lot of times, because I've been a youth worker, you actually think you're the savior. Mimi because our toto. If you come and see Mimi, and I think, it's a healthy self-esteem. It's good to have a good self-esteem. But in your own research here, you have showed me that the parent was number one. A lot of times, mom, parent, media. And by the way, I want to hear media. How come? I forgot that, but we'll come back to it. Grandfather. It seems as though there are these people. Now we need to also map it afresh. We know media is a big one, but we know a lot of the aiders of this is parents at home. We don't even need to do a research. Recently, my child, that joke on me, she's a ROPS candidate or ROPS student. There is a session where they go through journey through life. And you look back, and then you paint a picture moving forward. So they are told, go back home, research with your parent, what were your key markers along the way? And we created what's called a vision board. And so you get pictures. It got us going backwards. At 9 is when you began walking, and this. By the time we finished, we had bonded with our daughter. We had laughed. We had remembered stuff. And that helped us connect. Because the biggest thing is this time that we're talking about. That probably why your parent ranked high, or media, or any of these things, number 1, number 2, is because there's a lot of time given. Nowadays, parents have kind of checked out. That's the problem that we're having. They're not spending as much time. They've delegated these roles, nanny, and all these other places. But such an activity brings back the conversation with a teenager, and we're actually really having fun. The latest one was what we felt that Apo ata umetuonea. Because some guy went and created and said, when you go home for this one, you go and wash your teenagers' feet. And you demonstrate to them that, how Jesus did it and the whole service. And then you affirm them. This is so awkward. So we did it. We did it last Sunday. Said, okay, you know what? Let's just do it. In fact, for me, I said, I'm going to do everything that we are being taught. Si mimi ni mzazi wa parent, or your ROPS. Na mimi ndio nilikuwa naambia watu zile vitu wanafaa kufanya. Sasa it is my time to be told. Said, I'm going to chew everything they're going to throw at us. So we sat with our daughter in the bedroom. There were some issues that we had dealt with earlier. And our response, had it not been for that moment, we were going to just come out with our guns, just like, what do you mean you can do this? I said, let's start with love. Let's create nice experience, and then we will just share gracefully this truth that we need to share. So we did that. 2 hours, we were still there. When other parents began sharing, they said, we started at around 10, we slept at 3 a.m. Because we're just having a conversation. We were crying throughout because, we're forgiving each other and all that. But what the genius of what the youth worker did was they designed an experience and then threw it as a challenge to the parents, as a homework. But ROPS is very well structured. So there's a WhatsApp group. So again, those are things to begin thinking about. What would it look like if you could actually access all the parents at one go? Is there a possibility that you can actually talk to the parents in some way. We've been helped a lot by us approaching youth workers. There's a time when our daughters were very young, she would come out with like 6 sweets. And you say, Daddy, he's yours, Mom, and sibling. Then she remains with the other 3. Hey, like, but who gave you these sweets? Like, the teacher just gave me. For real, like you did. Okay, we want you, don't ask anymore. You already had in Sunday school. Now at the end, don't give. So we showed up to the teacher and told, we've instructed our daughter not to ask you, but if she does, you tell us, because you'll have violated an instruction we have given, and then we have to give out. We make sure that she gets a transformative experience. So she shows up. And she actually did the same. So we go to the teacher. The teacher was feeling so bad. Yeah, she actually did come and ask. So we collaborated with the teacher to make sure that she is abiding with the truth. But there are very few parents who do that. But then you can be the platform where you create this environment. So, but I don't want to be the one who gives you the answers, because I don't know what your context is. I've just shared a couple of stories of what can you do to create this effect of the village effect, that stakeholder and that stakeholder. There are those that you can control. There are those you have a smaller control. But as much as possible, how can you collaborate with the family, with the parent, so that you're not doing it alone? You're sending back homework, or you're creating experiences where the other stakeholder has to get in. How can the parent even know? You guys have sat here for today and then tomorrow, 3 days. You've learned so much. How do you respond to an LGBTQ conversation? How do you do that? The parents have no clue. They're out there looking for money. How can you share? What forums can you create? So I want us to go again into a small session, but my time is up, I'm told. Yes? Yeah. I don't know why I thought it was 4:30, but it's okay. Time is up. But maybe you can go and reflect by yourself. Can you allow us 3 minutes? 3 minutes, because it's important, because this is what lands on a practical level. What can you do? So I want us to discuss, it will be short, just 2 minutes, the things that you're thinking about, and share in your group. This is what I can create so that the parent gets roped in, and we're able to do this together as a village or as stakeholders who are aligned. We are sure there's so many who are not sending the same signal, but at least we and the parents, we can work together. How do you bridge that gap? So 2 minutes, I won't ask you to share, but just share amongst each other, and then I'll share my last point. If I were to just summarize what we were saying, here's where you are, the youth worker, partnering with the parent or the caregiver, whoever takes care of that child, and then also being aware of all the stakeholders, including the devil, all over here. But your greatest help is God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In your prayer, leadership, they say we don't care how much you know, we want to know how much you care. Now, I understand sometimes your ratio is 1 to 40. I was talking to a youth worker today. He says, hey, I handle 400, and there's about 12 of us. So he did a quick calculation. It means it's 1 out of 40. That's a really, really, in terms of just the ratio of how much you are split amongst so many. But part of that care requires that you be like Jesus. Jesus, when he was doing his youth ministry with his youth workers, you remember Peter's mother-in-law. Part of the care he showed was just going to pray for Peter's mother-in-law. And so that family element was very important. Paul, and this is a verse I want to end with, we know the verse, do not let anyone look down on you because you are young. 4:12, 1 Timothy. But set an example for the believers in speech, in purity, in faith. But when you go further, chapter 5 of 1 Timothy, verse 1, it gives some guidelines on how to engage the parent. It says, do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. So it's actually asking the youth worker to actually think of themselves as a family member of those 40 families. You're a family member of those 20 or of those 60. Some of you are very stretched, and I empathize. Treat younger men as brothers, those that you are discipling. Older women as mothers, meaning the moms, the grandmoms. Treat them as though they were your own mom. Younger women as sisters with absolute purity. And just the idea that you are a member of the family. There's, of course, that whole argument, Dr. Muridi almost mentioned it here, that maybe we should actually collapse these things so that we don't have youth. But that's an argument for another day. But as long as you're working here, do not think of yourself as separate from what the influences of the young person are. You are a member of the family. So you need to come around the table. It might mean visiting them, their graduations, whatever is very important for them. Then they know actually you actually care. Do the ones that you're able to. It also means that you need to raise other leaders so that you spread the work. You're not completely stretched out, so that you can actually strengthen this unit here. Because on a weighted index, the parent any day carries even the broken parent. And they're the ones who are causing a lot of mental health issues when they're divorcing or separating, or there are issues there. So you are a lot of things to that family. And so it cannot be a Sunday engagement. So family-based ministry demands a lot more. It demands a lot more than just doing a Sunday thing and then they go home. It means that you have to know when they behave like this, what do they believe in? Where did you get it from? It might mean sitting with the parent. I know of a school system that does that, Strathmore, where they can tell something is wrong. They even go back and meet with the parents and say, this child doesn't even have a good study room. It's not well lit. You need to create more space for this child. You know, like they're really into, and Catholics, by the way, I must commend them. They're very big on family. So they've done a lot, and they have a lot of books along those lines. Let me stop there, and hopefully I'll give you something to think about. It wasn't meant to be comprehensive. I believe in the wisdom of the community. There's a lot more wisdom than anything I have shared here. Please continue the conversation, continue the thought. Some of you have my number. Let's keep conversing.